Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we are going to have a fun episode with my friend Ryan Carter of DC Outfitters, the man with the strong beard game. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Jay?
I'm doing well. You know, I missed you up at the Western Hunting Expo, but every time I would go by, you'd seem to have a mob of 100 people around you.
I thought I hid pretty well with the beard. I was trying to go incognito, but it didn't work so well.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were trying out for the Duck Commander or if you were still with DC Outfitters.
I was hoping. They make a lot of money, but I'm just not getting that phone call.
The phone isn't ringing yet, huh?
Not yet. Fingers are crossed, though.
Ryan, yeah, good. Ryan, the last time we had you on the podcast, we discussed Utah elk. We've done some strategy stuff. We've done some preseason before the season strategy stuff. You've helped us kind of with applications and what have you. Today, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about everything. Before we really dive into the state of Utah and elk and what have you, give the listeners a little bit of an update on where we sit as far as precipitation, snowfall, and your outlook for the upcoming year compared to years past where we sit.
Wow. Okay. So this year, winter has hit us hard. Utah's got a ton of snow statewide, even in southern Utah, which typically we just kind of skate by. Southern Utah sitting, last time I saw, was like at 140% snowpack. So it's kind of exciting just knowing, like, one, we got that much water coming our way. Two, that last year was a drought year. So the positive note on the drought year, even though, last year we discussed a lot of the age class, what was going on with a lot of the bulls I'm seeing. A lot of that turned out really sour. I had 380 bulls that dropped down to 355. It was crazy to me the how bad the drought affected a lot of my bulls. I had a few come through that were the same size, nothing that outgrew what it was the year before, nothing. So I had a lot of 370s to 360 type bulls, and some of those bulls were old, 8 or 9 years old. So I expected more last year, but the drought hurt us. But the positive note of all that is that most of those bulls lived. I didn't have a lot of carnage down in southern Utah this year. So that just adds 2 more years to the bulls from 2017. So I'm hoping with this wet year we just have some insane antler growth. Now, I still say, precipitation's exciting. I've been watching some of these outfitters and some of these other Instagram. I saw Epic Outdoors and Go Hunt posting about the precipitation tables, how exciting it is with water. I still look at age class as our top priority. So even though water helps, and some of those units, genetics plus water, will really bump up bulls. You'll get a 6-year-old bull that will break 360. However, I still say you still need those 8 and 9-year-old bulls for the age to really kick in, for the antler growth to really bump your trophy class if you're trophy hunting. So it's exciting. It's going to be a super good year. I still think a lot of guys have a lot of grinding to do before a lot of big bulls die this year, but it should be fun regardless.
Let me play the devil's advocate just for a second, not on the age variable that you were bringing up, but on the fact of precipitation and moisture and snowfall. Is it possible that you could have 140% snowpack and have, just really, really good snows in the winter, and it stay cold enough through the spring that the elk potentially don't get that jump that we all hope they get? Is that a possibility? Do you see that even potentially playing out, or does that not bother you at all?
No, I've seen it. No, that's a valid point. I've had years that's really strange. It stays super cold. My experience as a shed hunter here in Utah, it varies region to region, but here in Utah, a lot of the sheds happen when the green grass starts to show, right? Like I really don't see that. There's some bulls that fall off pretty regular right about the same time. However, most of them kind of get this, I don't know, like this jump as soon as they start getting some green grass on the south slopes. That's when horns start to fall. I've had winters where we've had heavy snowpack. The antlers didn't fall off. Rather than the 1st of March, they fell off the 20th, the 30th of March. And it did hurt them. They didn't get that kickstart 3 weeks. Now, a mature bull elk averages about an inch of growth a day, depending on age and region. If we're missing 3 weeks, that's a kick to the nuts. So you have a very valid point. That could be the case. I don't see it. I think it's going to warm up. I mean, it's 42 right now, and we're still February. I think we're going to get a good year. I really do. But, you know, last year I was really wrong. I was excited about last year, and we got hurt bad. So you never know, right?
Yeah, so last year you had antler growth, you said, down from bulls that were 380 to, 350 type bulls. So as well as that, you had bulls that did not get harvested. Do you believe the overall harvest was down, not only, with age class of bulls that you're targeting, but as across the board? I mean, the hunt was probably tougher. But in general, those older age class bulls, they're basically just 1 year older, right?
Yeah. I don't know what the harvest rates were, to be honest. I'm stuck on one unit through most of September. I miss a lot of what's going on. I play catch up. I jump on social media, September 28th when I get back in service and start trying to figure out who killed what and what bulls died and see what I got tagged in. I lose a lot. So just based off what I saw on my units, I had 3 of my clients turn back in their tags so they could try again for this year. I think a couple of them will pull it for sure. We'll have them back. But those tags, so Utah has a system so that if something happens, if family problem, whatever, even if you're not even liking the elk you're seeing, up to 2 days before the hunt, you can return the tag that you were drawn. You lose the money, but you can keep your points. Or you can get your money back and lose all your points, which I don't think anyone would do. But you can return those tags and try again for the lottery next year, see if you get a better year. It's kind of a cool system, especially since a lot of these guys wait 20 plus years to draw these tags. But the end result of all that was that a couple days before the hunts, all these people were getting calls. Hey, you were the backup guy on the lottery system for if anyone turned their tag in, they did. Do you want the tag? And a week before the hunt, I was getting multiple calls from people looking for a guide because they drew a tag. If they had lots of points, I told them not to take them. If they only had 6 or 7, I said, heck yeah, take the tag, jump in, kill a nice bull, and then jump back in the pool 5 years from now. But overall, harvest was down. As far as age class, I still saw a lot of younger bulls dying. I just didn't see a lot of big bulls dying, and that was almost statewide. I mean, there were some big bulls. It seemed like Mossback took a few off San Juan. Wade Lemon killed one on the Beaver that was just huge big. There was a few bulls here and there, but statewide was really down for last year.
Ryan, you monitor these elk with trail cams, and you talk about age class. I hear you mention 8, 9. Is there a magic number, or a number that you would like to see your bulls reach, and then you feel like in that zone that, you know, they're going to be kind of at their maximum potential? And then another question to that is, do they get to a certain age and then you start seeing them decline? I'm curious on that.
I've never seen the decline. I don't know if that really exists with elk. I think you might have a year where their teeth have ground down far enough on a desert bull that they start to fall off. There is one bull on my unit that I kind of wonder about. The Tines Up boys cam him a lot. I think they call him Freak Nasty, or it's the Freak or something. He's a big, heavy old bull that no one can seem to kill. I don't hunt in that area. I don't cam that bull, but there's a lot of speculation on how old that bull is, and if he is, he has declined the last 2 years. I don't see it though. I typically see bulls kind of around 8, 9 years old is when they really kind of put on their maximum look, right? They'll hit this kind of peak. It doesn't mean they'll decline. I think, you know, as long as they stay healthy, I think they'll progress or stay the same. 2 years ago, my bow hunter killed a bull we watched called MJ. MJ he stayed at the 390 level from 15 to 17 at like 2 or 3 years, and then we killed him that fall, and he went unbroke, he's 421. I think he was missing 9 inches when we killed him. But he was 11 years old. Like, so 9, 10, 11, he was, or 9, 10, he was 390 type bull, which seems just maxed out. But then at 11 years old, he peaked one more year and put on 30 more inches. So wow. It's hard to say. I don't really know. I just don't. I'd be guessing. But as far as my bulls, I don't see them really break book, which is 375, until they're 7, 8 years old. Okay.
There's a lot to go into, a lot of stuff that was going through my mind when you were talking about that. Talk about, you mentioned shed season. You mentioned how much you like to find sheds. You talk about, camming bulls and trying to target bulls in the units that you like. We're kind of moving into that period of time where, the sheds are going to be dropping soon. How much do you try and target specific bulls that you're actually, your big bulls? How much do you really try and target and find their sheds? Or do you try and kind of stay out of where they're at, or how does that work?
I don't bother my bulls. That area, whether it's my fault or a couple other Instagram type people, I don't know, but that is probably one of the hardest hit areas in Utah. It gets hammered, and so I don't like going and hiking for 4 or 5 days to come out with 1 or 2 horns. I'd rather hit some of these units with the lower age class and see if I can't have some more fun, because in the end that's fun for me. But I do get tagged in a lot of the bulls that I hunt. People get on and say, hey, we found Chunky Monkey's right side, and come check it out. I'll go look at it. But I don't spend a lot of time down there just because of the competition.
Gotcha. You talked about when bulls typically are shedding in Utah, in the units that you shed hunt, whether it be, you mentioned kind of staying out of your core units. When do you normally see antlers really hitting the ground in numbers?
About the 3rd week of March. The first week of March, I typically have a few bulls dropping, and it's usually your 340 to 365 type bulls hit first in that first week, and then it seems like the second week, those same bulls are falling, plus your older age class. When the big bulls you're trying to target find their shed hunts or find their sheds, that's kind of the week that they fall, is that second week. And then 3rd week, they're all kind of hitting dirt pretty fast. Your younger age class, I've seen spike and 5-point bulls carry until mid-May before. It's hard to say what makes them kick off other than the growth underneath, but mid-March, that's about your hot spot. That's when you try to get out a little bit more. If the elk are in kind of a safe zone, obviously, especially on a snowpack year like this, I worry people get in a little bit, kick them around too much because of the competition of trying to grab those horns. Puts a little stress on the animals. A lot of the units in southern Utah, the Beltline, the Beaver, the Boulder, the Dutton, the San Juan, there's a lot of uncharted terrain that the bulls are safe in, and most guys can't access them until April, which is nice. Bookless too. But still, there's a lot of country that gets hammered really hard, and the elk get pushed. It's hard to say, but I think that third week of March is probably your hottest week.
Okay, so third week in March. When do you target and really start getting your strings of cameras out, or do you leave them all year? Talk a little bit about your strategy as far as trying to get all your cameras and get all your photos.
So I get my important pictures, the one that really kind of show how the bulls are going to look for the year. Like, in all reality, you don't know how they're going to look till about July 1st. But maybe mid-June is when I really start noticing character and I can identify those bulls. So I like to have my fleet rolling by mid-June. That being said, I have a lot of cameras out. I'm not even sure I know. I was going over the list the other day, how many I have out at the time. I just know my routes. And so I'll have a route where I start at one trailhead and I come out on another trailhead, and I'll hike, I don't know, between 13, 16 miles that day, and I'll set maybe 11 cameras. And then the next day, and then the next day. I usually have to start in May in order to get all my cameras out by June 15th. And from that point, that's when we start rechecking cameras to find out what bulls are where, so that we know kind of where to target, because then we'll shift. So, I target bulls. So by end of July, I'm kind of deciding, okay, here's my hit list of bulls, and say there's 10 of them. These are the 10 bulls that look the best for this year. So then I'll regroup cameras depending on which bulls we decide to target, because I only take 3 or 4 clients a year. And so I'll move more cameras into those areas to kind of set up a route on that bull, figure out kind of where he's bedding, where he's watering, where he's frequenting the most, and most important is find out where he's daylighting. And so a lot of times come August, I've shifted a bunch of my cameras, and they'll be sitting on, they're set for 1 bull, or maybe 2, if I have 2 in the area. So that's kind of my strategy. And then come, September ends in October. This year, I just didn't have it in me to pull any of them. I left them all. Hopefully they're all still out, and some of them clicked through the winter, but I didn't have the gusto to get them all last year.
So you've got some work to do is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, and there's good and bad to that. The bad is that, you risk people tampering with them, stealing them. But the good is they're out, they're in lock boxes, they're cabled. All I have to do is take in new cards and batteries and clean up the lenses a little bit. For this year, I'm not packing as much weight other than bait and batteries. I'm not having to reset each camera. So there's a good and bad to that. But I'm a little nervous about the former, about how many have been stolen or tampered with. I'm a little worried.
Yeah. What do you use to attract them to try and get their photos? Have you found any one particular thing that works better than others?
That for the most part, because of how I hunt my bulls, and my most important asset is my summer cameras while the velvet's growing, just salt. Any salt. I don't care if it's Trophy Rock, Critter Lick, Morton, softener, like water softener salt works. That's probably my biggest thing through the summertime. I use and try everything. Certain areas are more, some things work better than others. Like if I have tons of cattle, Trophy Rocks are awesome because, the cattle can't lick them gone. They eventually get sick of them and walk off. Whereas if I lay down some Critter Lick, they'll dig a hole 4 feet deep before it's gone, and then in a week I have no salt because the cattle got to it all. And so some things are better than others, and I try to keep in mind where my cattle are as to what kind of bait I'm putting down. But for those months of June through August, I really focus on salt. September I shift, but there's things that work and things that don't, but in all reality, once the velvet strips, nothing really works. That's when you focus on water. That's when you focus on bedding areas. I do better cam work in areas with no bait in September than I do with bait, if that makes sense.
Yeah, what cameras right now are you running and having the most success with? What models?
Well, I run all stealth cams, just because I've set up a deal with them because I run so many cameras. And the camera I order the most, they have some cool cameras, some cameras that are like getting some color photos at nighttime, and they have some really cool cameras. Even their lower end seem to do really well at pictures. I run probably 80 of their DS4K cameras. It runs video and pictures at the same time in 4K quality. They're unreal. They're expensive, but the results, is just picture clear everything. I can watch the bull turning his head side to side and get a good idea. I score bulls based on physical attributes. I'll sit and break down, okay, he's got an 8-inch ear. And I'll look at the ear and I'll look at the bridge of the nose, which is about 13 inches, and I can sit and kind of go over that to help me gauge, because a lot of times body size messes you up. Like you can have a big old bodied bull and have these horns that don't look great and kind of throw you off. Having the 4K quality allows me to judge them just a little bit better because of their physical attributes, whereas cameras, especially cheaper cameras with like bad night glare, can really throw off your game a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Over there in Colorado on the Ot6 Ranch, we run some 4K cameras, and we run the G34 Pro. One thing we've been noticing on the G34 Pro is that the nighttime photos, I guess it would be the flash or the infrared flash, is so bright that it kind of washes out the photo. Whereas the 4K, we've had so much fun with some of the 4K video stuff. It's amazing.
Isn't it crazy? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy good. It's unbelievable.
As far as the glare on that, on your G series, the lower G series, the 30s, the 32s, 34s, you get that really bad. So I've been telling people to upgrade to the 40s and try to go no glow, or even the low glow. The F series were okay, but the no glows are even better. Because the 4K does a decent job at night, but if you have a night spot that's really frequent, I put in those no glow cameras, and there's not so much of a bright infrared, if that makes sense. And those are the cameras I'm getting weird, like, color photos at nighttime. Like, it's pretty strange. It's neat to see, but you're not getting the drown out effect. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like the closer, if you can get the camera set far enough away, you don't get that shine quite as bad. If you're set you want to set pretty close, because I always feel like in the dark, if you're too far away, you're not going to get it. But it's kind of a fine line. But Hunter Meekum and I have had fun running those stealth cams as well, and been learning. I've never really run cameras until my experience there at the OT6, and so we've been learning quickly on things that work better and what have you. Talk a little bit about your entry and exits, meaning, if you've got salt or what have you, or if you're on water, from the path of entry to the path of exit, how will you set those cameras up, whether it be parallel or perpendicular or what to the path, and what works best for you for getting those best photos? And what angle do you want, what's your prime angle?
Okay. Entry and exit, as far as my entry and exit, or the elks, or both?
The elk. Like getting their photo,
okay.
Like how do you set the camera in relation to where you think they're coming from and leaving from your little area, whether it be salt or water? Are you setting them where they're head on, where they're walking in, walking out? Or are you setting them to the side at a quarter? How do you do it?
Well, it's always tough, and every spot's different, right? So I always want a profile view. The head-on stuff kills me, because air inches aren't as important as actual inches on their head. And so if I can get the profile view rather than their width, I would way rather have that. But the most important thing to me is getting rid of sun glare. And it really limits your trees and your placement, because you almost have to have your camera facing due north or due south in order to avoid those really bad glares in morning and evening when the elk are moving, right? And
right.
So I take what I can get, but I try to make the best judgment possible when I walk in there, because I'll look around, I'll figure out, it looks like they're coming in from this way. I can profile it, but I have a hard northwest angle, and then it depends on the steepness, or if you're on a bench, the height or placement of the camera. Typically you want to keep it at that 40-inch mark. Not too much higher, too much lower. But if you're on a steep hill, I'll drop it down on the tree a little bit so that it's more head-on with them, or vice versa. If it's going the other way and I have to angle my camera, a lot of times, so I have to lock all my cameras. I'm on public land. I'm in areas that have multiple cameras. If I'm putting on a wallow, sometimes I'll have close to 20 cameras in there. I do have a lot of competition, and so most of my cameras are locked in. And so when I'm setting my camera before I lag bolt them to the tree, I'll go through and put like a stick to angle that security box enough to where it's pointing to where it's going to hit those elk in the nose. Because I don't want to cut off the antlers, and I don't necessarily want to, cut off anything else, but I have to make the best judgment possible. Some spots are really tight, and some of them are huge, big meadows, It's always hard, but it's trial and error for me every time. And I've been doing cameras since the 35mm flash cameras way back when. I still have to sit and figure it out.
When you come to a spot and let's say you come and you're checking your camera, and let's say you notice another camera there, and just wondering what goes through your mind and just standard protocol as to how you handle it. Let's say you see another camera there, and it's like, all cockeyed to the side, all all jacked up. If you don't know whose camera it is, do you go over and try and at least straighten the camera, or is your, is the way you try and handle it just, leave whatever you see alone, and or, if you know it's somebody's camera, do you specifically go call them on the phone and say, hey, I was up at so-and-so, just want to let you know someone's turned your camera completely around on the tree, or someone's put tape over it, or, how do you handle that? Because, I know as long as you've done it, you've seen all of the scenarios. What are your general, what are you thinking about that?
My experience is that the Good Samaritan always gets punished. I really, more often than not, I know whose camera it is. If it's tape, I will call them if I pulled it off and let them know. You know, I'll call Wade Lemon's guy. I'll say, hey, dude, you had tape on your camera. He did that for me last year. Knowing that, I had some hidden cameras. I found out who was doing it. All the same, like, typically I won't touch them. I'll try to get a hold of who it is and let them know, because I've lost friendships over walking over and straightening a camera and then that person thinking I was the one that did it. And it's,
Gotcha.
I mean, it's such a bad deal that it's even an issue. When I walk into a meadow and I see a camera there, I think it's etiquette that you don't hang your camera on the same tree as that person. You know, my area, it's not like there's one cedar over a guzzler. I'm in pine trees or aspens, or you can pick another tree. Typically, like, I really go out of my way to kind of wave, let them know I'm there. A lot of times that throws guys off. Oh, crap, BC's in here. But, you know, I don't want people ever thinking I'm messing with their stuff. They see the date I'm in there. They see I set my camera, I left. In fact, the one relationship that I just referred to that was kind of wrecked over me fixing one of their cameras has been fixed just by me. Every time I see one of their cameras going through, waving, making sure they know I'm in there, and you know, they're like, yeah, Ryan's pretty good.
Yeah.
Trail cameras are a weird deal, especially on public land. You know, there's bad people and good people, and man, you hope for the latter every time, but sometimes that's not the case, and it's not always other sportsmen. Some of the guys that had issues last year were cattlemen, and I don't know why they would care, but obviously they cared, because it was a cattleman who smashed and took about a half dozen cameras from me last year, and I caught him on camera doing it. And so it's not always sportsmen that are the culprit. Sometimes, yeah, I got a lot of hippies where I'm at. I've had guys walking through picking mushrooms smash my cameras before, so it's kind of a weird deal. The last couple years, there has been a lot of it hasn't been as bad as it has in years past. It seems like people have been pretty good lately.
Let's shift gears here for a second and go back to the Utah big game hunting regulations, the draw. Everything is due coming up here on March 7th. And one thing I think it's important to point out is Utah obviously has preference points, and you know, a lot of these prime units take a lot of preference points in order to draw, but as well as that, they also give random tags to non-residents. Wanted to just kind of talk to you about, do you hear from people every year that just draw randomly?
I do, but not a lot. You know, as the years have gone by, I've scaled back the units I cover. I really only cover one anymore. There's not a lot of tags. Non-resident wise, I think 2 archery, 5 to 7 rifle per each early and late season, and then 2 muzzleloader. The random guys don't hit me up very often. Typically, it's the high point guys that have waited 22, 24 years to pull a tag. But again, I'm not in those units that give out lots and lots of non-resident tags. So typically, a lot of the guys I talk to, I've been talking to for 5-6 years. They've been planning and prepping for when they eventually pull that lottery permit.
Let's talk about, you mentioned, you're kind of down to 1 or a couple units. Talk about the unit that you like, that you spend most of your time in.
The last few years, I specifically guide the Boulder Plateau. I've just been trapped there because the age class has been a lot better, and I love it. It's actually one of the crappier units to draw a tag if you don't know the area. it's a hard hunt. That's why the age class is there. You're on a plateau that you can't glass necessarily. That's why I rely so heavily on cameras in that unit, is because you don't see those bulls. People get frustrated because they'll make 5 scouting trips and not see an elk. It's a tough unit to kind of tackle, and that's why the age is there. But I run cameras on multiple units because I still have my spots I love, right? So not all my bulls I post are all from one area, but a lot of them are, and that's kind of what makes it fun, is that age class.
Do you have guides that guide in several of the other units as well, or are you guys primarily just guiding on the boulder?
No, I have 3 guys that run for me, and we pretty much stay on the boulder. In fact, most of the time we stay in one camp. Kind of makes it fun that way. Everyone kind of keeps tabs on where we're going each day and what bulls we're chasing and what bulls we're seeing. A lot of the time, especially during the rut, I rarely even carry binoculars because we walk into an area with one specific bull in mind, and typically he's big enough that I can tell without having to glass him up, because you don't shoot over 100 yards. The elk it's tight quarters. But you know that I've tried expanding and then scaled back. I grew up guiding the Nebo, the Manti. I've done the Dutton a lot of years, which is one of my favorite units. Boulder age class has been consistent through these hard years, and so I've kind of, I don't know, I've painted myself in a quarter, so to speak.
Meaning you've got a line on, you kind of know the patterns of a handful of big bulls, and you hate to just leave it, even though there might be some other units that you would have more fun hunting and guiding in. You feel like you've done all the work. You can't leave some of those older age class bulls.
That's my problem.
Yeah.
There's almost every unit I have enjoyed guiding elk more than I have this one. It's the age class and the history I have with a lot of these bulls that is what kind of keeps me there.
Yeah. What do you notice these bulls that you're chasing? I know they're all different. I know we've talked about some of them before, but you know, you've got your areas that you run them. You know, they're velvet. They run all summer. We've talked about on the podcast where you like the archery hunt. You actually like the archery hunt dates from a standpoint of they start in mid-August, and you can still target those bulls. At what point in time, you know, from a calendar standpoint, do you typically notice that most of those bulls make some sort of move?
I have about 2 weeks after the velvet strips before the bulls start kind of getting antsy and they start doing their pre-rut kind of check. Now, your 5 and 6 year old bulls, those 330, 340 type bulls, come Labor Day, start to get in their head that it's their big chance, right? Those bulls fire up and they start moving cows, and they get out of their routine first, and that's about Labor Day. They're the bulls that kind of, they're the ones that start piping off at Labor Day. Those are the ones that get killed by the general public for the most part. My bigger bulls don't start cruising until usually around the 10th or 15th of September. That's when they kind of get out of their patterns. So for my style of hunting, I enjoy the archery hunt because I still have a pattern on those bulls. It's just kind of how I do it. I just feel like if I can pattern them, I can ambush kill them. There's some kind of routine that I can follow. Once the rut kicks in, I'm ground and pound just like everybody else. We're bugling, we're running all day, and I'll go from area to area to area because my bulls migrate. Most of their rutting grounds, where I find them on the muzzleloader hunt, end of September, early October, is almost 20 miles from where I'm getting their summer pictures. I have 2 bulls that travel over 30. And so once the rut kicks in, once that kind of magic September 15th, 20th area kind of goes, my bulls are typically 12 to 15 miles from where I was getting them all summer. So that's when it gets hard for me. That's when I put on lots of miles just like everybody else. Whereas if I can kill them during the bow hunt, you know, we're hiking into wherever that stand is, and that's the most aggressive part of your day. Does that make sense?
And yeah, and most of it is tree stand up in a tree, getting some elevation and sitting in a tree stand, or is it also ground blind?
Yeah, it all depends on each area. I like the tree stand because I like the thermals up there. If I, you know, but on the same point, like a lot of people that hire guides are the guys that can afford them. They're a little bit older and don't like to get up in a tree. And so I do run blinds just as much as I do tree stands, but if I got a guy who can sit a tree, that's my preference.
Okay. So you talk about, you know, when the rut really gets going and towards the muzzleloader hunt, you know, the bulls are just going, you know, your big bulls have really, really moved. My question would be, how many of your bulls after the rut come back to the summer spot? And how many of them have a specific spot that they, you know, quote unquote winter, and then you'll find them in the summer? I'm trying to draw a correlation between, you know, do those elk come back to their summer ground and stay there as long as they can unless winter pushes them out?
I'm hunting high desert, so I do have bulls in Ponderosa country that will stay in that country through the summertime. They'll rut there, they'll winter there. They don't leave, but it's really few and far between. The majority of my bulls have kind of a summer high ground where they're up at 10,000 feet and then drop down in the low country, which isn't really low. It's 8,000 feet, 77 to 8,700 feet down in the PJs. And so most of my bulls, the vast majority, migrate a long ways between, I don't know, let's say Labor Day to September 20th, and then back again, you know, about April. I start getting them back on camera early May in their same summer grounds. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, but what I'm saying, though, is you don't necessarily have those bulls that have been in their summer grounds, then they leave to go rut, but they come right back after the rut, say, end of October, early November. They're right back where you've gotten them all summer. They don't come back.
No, I don't get that. I really don't.
Okay. What impact has the late hunts? I know in Arizona the age class has really been depleted. We've had a number of issues, but one of them is we've got a lot of tags on the late hunt. We've had some burns, and it's allowed guys to really be, you know, efficient with killing these bulls, you know, with the big rifles and, you know, the big optics and all of that. What impact does the late elk hunting on some of your giant bulls or big mature bulls play?
On my unit, that's part of the reason we have a good age class. The late hunt is not that effective. The plateau doesn't allow for a lot of glassing. Every couple of years, it seems like the rut pulls them into an area where guys can get them with the big guns. It happens. I won't say it doesn't, but the reason my unit's better than some of these other ones is for that very reason. It has an ineffective late hunt. Whereas units like the San Juan and the Beaver, the reason their age class has dropped so dramatically over the last 5 years is because of that late hunt. All of your 350s and 360s that made it through the rut that are your next year up-and-comers seem to get hammered on that late season. And it really decimates the age class. And so part of the reason I've worked myself into a corner on the unit I'm on is because of the ineffective late hunt.
And the reason it's ineffective is it's so thick, the glassing is not real conducive, and it's just not super effective. So in other words, it's so thick that they're not killing them on the late hunt.
Right. It's thick and it's flat. And it's just like any Southwest desert, the plateau. You go from mesa to mesa to mesa. Sometimes those mesas are glassable. Like sometimes they're there, but it's pretty rare. It's few and far between. So more often than not, optics are ineffective. Long-range guns are ineffective, and that's why it's a good unit for age. Other than that, and San Juan has those areas. Even Beaver has those areas, but Beaver still has, as you well know, I mean, it's one of the most rugged units in the state, really high south slopes. And I don't know what you were doing elevation-wise, but the couple times I've hunted the Beaver, we were doing close to 2,000 feet a day. That's the reason why, those elk in November get isolated on those south faces, and, man, they can hammer the herd real quick.
Yeah, for sure. Ryan, I want to take a quick second here to thank the sponsors of the podcast, and I want to thank GoHunt.com. My friend Cody Nelson is the optics manager there at GoHunt.com, the gear shop. And if you guys have any binocular needs, any optics, any rifle scopes, tripods, if you want to talk glassing methods, anything, Cody Nelson is a great guy to talk to. You can reach him at 702-847-8747. That's extension 2. You can also send him an email at optics@gohunt.com. I also want to thank GoHunt.com Insider and remind you guys this is obviously application season. If you go to GoHunt.com/JScott, you're going to get a $50 GoHunt Gear Shop gift certificate just for signing up, and that is going to allow you to use those points right there in the gear shop. And GoHunt Insider is the best Western hunting resource out there as far as draw odds, harvest statistics, strategy articles, and what have you. Make sure to check it out. I want to thank them for their sponsorship. I also want to thank KUIU. That's KUIU. .com, KUIU.com, KUIU Ultralight Hunting. That's the gear that I wear on all my hunts. Make sure to check them out, KUIU.com. Also, Canyon Coolers right out of Flagstaff, Arizona. If you use the JScott19 promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount. Phonescope.com. If you use the JScott19 promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount. And onxmaps.com. Ryan, I know you use OnX Maps. OnXmaps.com. If you use the JScott19 promo code at onxmaps.com, you're going to get a 20% discount. Ryan, we had put out on Instagram, we were kind of going back and forth talking about this podcast, and we put out, for the followers, Instagram followers, some questions, and we've got some that have come in. I want to kind of shotgun through some of these. Some of these we can answer quickly. Some of these, may be more in depth. But I think it'd be fun to answer some of these questions. So let's dive into them. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, a question comes in about the Book Cliffs. It says, Book Cliffs quality of bulls, ?
Well, the books, I got called on last year. I had a couple guys call me out. I had actually been shed hunting it pretty hard. Found some good bulls. I thought the books were really coming back. Turns out, I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but a lot of those bulls might have migrated off the Indian reservation. And so once I started bantering back with a few of these kids trying to figure out how things looked, it doesn't sound like a lot of it's doing very well. I have seen a few trail cam pics off some big bulls on the Bitter Creek South area from some vernal kids. So I know there's still some good bulls on that unit. But for the most part, when I got kind of picking the brains of these outfitters that are running over there, they're killing what the objective is. And if I remember right, Bitter Creek South is managed for a 6-year-old bull unit, and the roadless side is doing 7 to 8-year-old bulls. But for the most part, a lot of the bulls coming off that unit are the 330 to 360 class, both sides. So I think someone might have been putting that in there just to kind of pick my brain a little, because like I got some heat for that, and rightly so. I don't know it well enough to say it is what it is, but I can tell you a lot of the sheds I pick up off that unit are probably that 5 and 6 year old bull class. I pick up a lot of 5 points and 320 type 6 points. So it's hard to say because I don't run enough time on it, like during the rut, to see what it really is. But from what I got from these outfitters that I really, and this was pretty recent, I picked their brains pretty hard. It sounds like it's gone downhill the last 2 or 3 years. I love the Book Cliffs. I love the terrain. When I was a kid, that's where I grew up elk hunting with my grandpa. I'm very passionate about the Book Cliffs. I love them. But I think our age class is down.
Okay. I've got a question in regards to the Book Cliffs that didn't come in, but yesterday at church, a guy that I know, he's a little bit older. He can't get around quite as much as he used to. He's got 18 non-resident points for Utah, and he noticed that the Book Cliffs had one of those units where you can actually put in and draw and get any weapon. So in other words, you could hunt it archery, you could hunt it, early rifle, muzzleloader, late rifle. And I told him that I was a little bit worried about him being able to get around in that unit, and I was thinking that the Fish Lake unit would maybe be a better option as far as being able to get around. I'm just curious your thoughts on, and the interesting thing is I'm looking here at the Go Hunt, let me look real fast, 18 points. He could either do Central Mountains Manti, he could do muzzleloader and it'd be 100%, or he could do the LaSalle, or he could do the Fish Lake. I was trying to talk him into, with 18 points, being kind of an elderly guy, probably mid to late 60s, that Fish Lake. I know you know Fish Lake pretty well. What are your thoughts for that with 18 points for a muzzleloader for a guy that's, just trying to, have a good elk hunt?
What are his odds on the Monroe? Can you see that?
Yeah, the Monroe are, so the Monroe for muzzleloader, it looks like 4.8%. So he's not in the.
No.
Well, he would not be in the max.
The Fish Lake's a good unit for road hunting, so to speak. You don't have to be too aggressive on your boots, so it may not be a bad option for him. The first question I ask everybody that asks me about units and points, and I ask them what their goal is and what their age is. Like if they're 28 and they're they put in for multiple states, and I try to tell them, hey, make Utah your big bull state. Go for broke. Wait 10 more years. And an older gentleman like him, and I would say, yeah, let's cash in and just do the best we can do. Fish Lake, he's going to want to pursue every bull he sees over 330. I mean that's facts. It's not a lot of big bulls come off that unit.
But don't you think you'd be better off, he'd be tickled pink with a 330 bull. And my point was, rather than go archery when maybe they're not bugling very much and what have you, he could go on a Fish Lake muzzleloader, probably have him bugling pretty good and have a pretty darn good hunt.
Have the time of his life. The Fish Lake would be good for that. Book Cliffs wouldn't be bad for that either. The Bitter Creek South, the roaded side of the Book Cliffs, which is the bigger portion of the unit, has a lot of oil access. There's roads all over the place, and when I grew up, it was my grandpa, his brother John, and my dad all had tags on that. All three of them, I mean, they got around, but not a ton. We literally killed almost all those bulls to where we could get a truck to them. The Book Cliffs, roaded side is not a bad hunt for an old man, and same with the Monroe. The Monroe, in my circles, we've always joked it's the gentleman's hunt. There's a ton of access on that unit, but the tags are really low, especially for non-residents. It seems like Monroe's one of those give out 27 archery tags, and maybe 3 of them go to non-resident type units. So, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. That's me shooting from the hip, but it's pretty. That one's a tough one to pull.
Okay, let's jump to the next question. What are your thoughts on the Manti archery, best ways to scout, and what class of bull should one target?
Manti's target bull is a 6-year-old bull. Archery, you want to go high. The nice thing about the Manti, most of the roads are on top. That's where Utah's famous Skyline Drive is. The roads are up there at 10,000 feet. And they run the mountaintops and the ridge tops, and so you're looking down. The crappy part about that is, yeah, you can find the bulls, but you've got to shoot them low and pack them back up to your truck. So you've got to be pretty physically fit for that unit. As far as archery goes, I would stock every bull I saw over 330. If he's a good 6-point, you stock him. The Manti looks good right now. There was a couple good bulls taken, a couple that they said was over 400. I don't know if they're really that big. I haven't seen them in the books yet. But I went in November up to one of my old stomping grounds just to kick around and see if we could see deer, because a lot of the roads had been closed for a few years. Saw some nice bucks, picked up some good sheds, and glassed 2 bulls in the 360s, which means they made it through the late hunt. They're going to be good bulls next year. Manti can be a good unit, but it's pretty rugged.
Okay. Thoughts on Panguitch Lake, if it's a sleeper unit or not?
Panguitch is one of my favorite units. Panguitch is on that same belt line with the Beaver, the Boulder, the San Juan. It's just good genes in that belt, right? Panguitch had a really good burn 2 years ago. Or was that 3? Might have been 3 years ago. But I still haven't seen the age class coming back. I talked to a couple guys that hunted at late hunt this year. They did not see anything extremely impressive. But that historically, that unit's produced some giant bulls. I wouldn't walk away from it. If I was sitting in that low point pool to where my point creep's still 10 points plus away, I'd be looking at the Panguitch, but I'd be spending some time there first. Typically on that unit, the most effective hunts are the archery and the late. The rut, while the rut's fun, it's really hard to find age class on that unit. It can be pretty rugged, but when they're on the south slopes or they're up on the tops, it seems like you can glass them a little bit better. So archery and late hunt's really good for that unit.
Wasatch or 9 Mile Anthro for DIY early rifle?
Every year I hear about a couple good bulls on the Anthro. I don't see them. I don't see them killed. I know the genetics are there. Anthro borders a couple CMWUs that beats bulls over 390 every year. So I know the genetics are there, but I don't see the bulls. I would go Wasatch because there's more permits. I don't even know how many permits the Wasatch does. I think it's close to 500 limited entry elk permits. And there's always good bulls. I'm watching one in the winter right now that I think's mid 380s. It's on that unit. He's alive. He will be there through next hunt. I think it can be good, but it takes work, a lot of oak brush, a lot of elevation. You're going to work your guts out on that unit.
Guy saying, I want some knowledge about the Monroe and the Dutton.
I'm not the guy to ask on the Monroe. I know there's good bulls on the Monroe. I know it's got good genes. I do a lot of four-wheeler riding on the Monroe. I don't actually hunt it. So I'm not the guy to go to. Dutton, I love. It's another unit you're going to work your guts out on. I put a lot of miles on. Dutton's like really famous for its horse country. A lot of horsemen love that mountain because there's so limited access that the horsemen can get back in a long ways and do fairly well. One of my favorite units, but at the same time, don't expect a cakewalk.
Okay. Question here. Guy saying he's originally from Idaho. What unit in your mind is the coveted Utah tag? San Juan, like everyone else does.
Well, that San Juan's where all the points are. All of our max point holders are still sitting on that San Juan tag. San Juan, as far as elk hunting, is probably one of the pinnacles because it's accessible. It's lots of open country. There's a lot of glassing. It's beautiful, and it occasionally has age class. I know this year people really struggled with it, but San Juan had the same drought I did. So it's hard for me to say with no boots on the ground how that actually looks. I would say the Boulder or the San Juan are probably top two, but then again, our biggest bull came off the Beaver last year. You can't discount it.
Yeah.
And it all depends on what your goals are. I mean, if the most coveted tag might just be the funnest hunt, and if that's the case, I might tell you Fish Lake. You're not going to kill trophy class there, but we have a huge elk herd on that unit, and it's beautiful. It's one of the biggest living organism aspen groves in the world is on that unit. It's one of our healthiest elk herds, and I mean, if elk hunting is the thing, not inches, by all means, that's our best unit. So it all depends on what you're looking for in the hunt, right?
Mm-hmm. This guy says, Southwest Desert, is it worth 12 points early rifle or put in elsewhere? He must be a resident.
Yeah, I would guess so.
We don't hear much about the Southwest Desert.
Well, Southwest, I mean, it's tough. It's like hunting desert mule deer. You might find a canyon with some old bull that, man, nobody's hunted. I hear about guys finding these little draws and picking up sheds 3 and 4 years off one bull who's been hanging in there his whole life, and he's old. That desert produced a 420 last year. I don't know if many people know about him. That was one of the biggest bulls to come out of the state. I saw trail cam pics of 2 other bulls that I think if they weren't they were really close. I don't think they got killed. But Southwest Desert is a tough hunt. It's kind of like the Boulder. You're going to have to get a lot of cameras out, a lot of boots on the ground, and really cover some country to even scratch the surface. Some of those bulls, I know one of the 2 that were pushing that 400 mark, the camera was right next to the road. I know they're there. It's just, it can be tough. So it all depends on how much you want to work. I think it's a great unit. And every person that puts in and draws that unit turns around and goes back because they love it so much. Historically, we've killed some giant bulls on that unit. It's borders Nevada. I think that giant bull came from Nevada that got killed this year. It was a Nevada bull killed on the Utah side. So it's hard to say. How much you want to work, dude. That's your answer.
Have you ever drawn an Arizona early archery bull tag? If so, how many points did it take you, or are you searching for that? Is there a certain unit that you're looking for down there in Arizona?
I've never drawn Arizona. I don't have a lot of points in Arizona. In fact, I've got to be around 7 or so. I just figure I'm going to pull a late tag one of these years and just go have fun with a gun. But I haven't spent a lot of time or stressed it that much. I seem to have my hands tied here.
So if someone says, how do you kill so many giants and look so good doing it? That has to be one of your buddies.
I'm sure that's somebody giving me some shit.
No, but it is a good question though. Like, if someone were just looking at it on the face value, like how do you target and chase giants? I mean, from a third-party perspective, looking at what you do, my answer would be because I spend my time targeting giant bulls, and that's what we focus on. But what is your answer?
No, that would be the answer. The reason why we do is because we don't kill the lower age class bulls. I make sure, I pull clients that have that expectation. One of my first questions is, how many bulls have you killed? It's the guys that haven't killed a lot of elk and typically it's Utah residents that have waited years and years and years for this tag without going out of state. They can't keep off the trigger of those 350, 360 class bulls. It's my guys that hunt multiple states that have killed lots and lots of bulls that are the guys that are able to hold off and kill the upper age class. But my whole approach is target the age class. You call it trophy hunting, call it whatever you want. I feel like a unit like that where guys have waited 20 plus years to pull a tag, let's go for broke. If you're happy with a 330 type bull, by all means, you can get a good New Mexico tag in 3 years. Wyoming, where are we at? Are we 8 or 10 years for some of their better units? I mean, there's no reason to wait 20 years to kill that age class in a state that you can do really well in. So go for broke and try to target trophy bulls. That's how you kill them. If that isn't your goal, you're not going to kill them, right?
Yep. Good answer. Okay, top 3 late rifle elk units. Utah.
Again, what's your goal?
Let's say that your goal is to kill the biggest bull you can.
Probably beaver would probably be number 1. San Juan, depending on how deep your pockets are, a lot of those bigger bulls winter on some private ground and you can get access. San Juan does have a really effective late hunt and it's still got age class just like the beaver. For fun, Manti is probably one of your best. Manti, you can drive and glass and drive and glass and drive and you'll see a lot of bulls. You're just going to be looking over a lot of younger bulls looking for something that stands out. But a really good late hunt, so it all depends on what you're looking for. But that our top age class units, I think, are the San Juan, Boulder, Beaver, Roadless Books, which doesn't have a late hunt. There's one other, I think it's the Deep Creeks, or was. They might have pulled that one off. But those are the ones with our age class. So of those units, I'd say San Juan and Beaver. But then if you're just looking for a good bull, there's some more effective ones. Dutton's really effective on the late hunt. In fact, a lot of my bulls on the Boulder migrate to the Dutton, just like some of the Beaver bulls migrates to the Panguitch Lake. Both of those units, Dutton and Panguitch Lake, have a really effective late hunt. So you can capitalize on some of the age class of the other units on those ones if you're paying attention and you've spent some time down on those units in November. Might give you an idea of where to start.
Someone says here, can there ever be a change to the point system? Will our kids ever be able to draw? What are your thoughts?
I read that, and it's heartbreaking to think about, right? As residents, yes, they have a chance. It's there. Right? Most people draw before 20 points as residents. There's more tags available. As non-residents, I don't see how anyone under the point creep, which, if my math is right, around 12, if you don't have 12 points now, you will never statistically be in that max point pool for one of the tags. And so it really hurts you. For the kids and the younger guys really getting into the sport, that's what's killing us, non-resident-wise. It's really deterring people from putting in for Utah. I listened to Corey Jacobson. What's his Elk 101, they kind of went through a state-by-state breakdown of ways you can hunt elk every year. Utah is like the worst state on their list. Like, it's your last priority of putting in as a non-resident is Utah, because it's so, like, limited on non-resident access.
Let me play the devil's advocate on that for just a second, and just curious where this conversation might go. Let's say that Utah did not have the structure that they have, and let's say that every year you could go get over-the-counter tags and pretty much everyone could come hunt Utah. Is there a chance that Ryan Carter might not be as passionate about what he does because there's not many giant bulls around and you're harvesting 2- and 3-year-old bulls? Is there something to be said, and this is just a general question, and this we could probably go on for about 6 hours on this, but, you know, I understand what people say when they want to have opportunity for the youth and people that don't hunt and what have you, but I think almost having these states, Arizona, Utah, some of these states where it's hard to get tags, it creates better antlers, it creates more age class, and in essence it creates a situation where you've got a guy like Ryan Carter who is, you know, head over heels over mature, big, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old bulls, and it's awesome. I'm not so sure, Ryan, that you would be as enthusiastic about what you do and have the passion if there were only 2- and 3-year-old elk running around the woods. It wouldn't be fun. It would almost be, in essence, like if you were fishing and all you caught were 6 or 8 inch trout, or you've got rivers and such where you've got, you know, catch and release and such where you've got 18 to 24 inch brown trout that are, you know, big giant fish that people are passionate about catching. I'm curious your thoughts on this. And this guy is not, you know, I'm taking an extreme here, but I think some of these states that do restrict licenses and create mature animals, I think is almost better for what we do. Curious your thoughts.
Well, I think you're right on. I mean, it's the reason I don't mule deer hunt, right? Utah doesn't. They give out so many general season mule deer tags that our age class isn't there. It's not exciting for me. I like hunting mule deer. I wouldn't say I'm crazy about it, but I don't get excited because I've killed enough 20-inch deer in my life that it's hard for me to want to invest a lot of time chasing them because I keep killing the same age class, right? And maybe if I wasn't so passionate about elk, maybe I'd spend more time and do better. But I don't get the passion because the way they've managed our deer has been pretty piss poor, in my opinion. Whereas, you know, if I lived in Colorado, things might be different. A resident in Colorado can do fairly well with a little bit of hard work because they've managed their deer a lot better. I don't know. Utah's had its day of open bulls. You know, there was a time when the Dutton, the Boulder, these were over-the-counter, like you could hunt them every year tags. They did okay, not great. I remember, you know, they shifted them and made these Air 301 tags. They were archery only, no preference point type hunts. You could draw almost every single year, and there was no penalty. Man, I saw some giant bulls die on the Dutton, like by the same guys, multiple years running. But I still think I enjoy the way it's structured. I think there needs to be some kind of change in the tag allocation. But that's why it's important to have units like the Wasatch versus the Boulder. With you know, the Wasatch, I don't even know the non-resident tags, but typically it's a 10%. So if there's 500 resident tags, there's at least 50 going to non-residents, and that's cycling through 50 guys that are going to come on and be happy with a 350 type bull, 340, 330. That's where the Wasatch is sitting, which is great. And so that's why I always ask guys their first question, like, what's your goal? You want to have a good hunt, or are you looking for inches? Because sometimes it's funner just to go have fun and shoot a really nice bull and spend some time with your family. It's worth 10 years of putting in, and you walk away with a great memory. Inches aren't always the most important part. So I don't know. I don't know the right answer to that. And I think it's fair to play the devil's advocate. I think our state needs to look at that. We've got to find some way to make sure that these kids that are at 14 years old getting passionate about the sport have some kind of opportunity when they're 35 to be able to harvest some of these bulls, because as it is right now, statistically as a non-resident, it's near impossible. That's frustrating.
Yeah. I want to ask you about, I didn't go to the auctions at the Western Hunting Expo, the conservation tags and some of the unit-wide tags and what have you in Utah, compared to other years. The prices of these tags, are they up, down? Are they the same? Have the conservation tags been going sky high this year? Where are we at in that?
Most of the tags seemed a little down to me. There was a couple elk tags that went high. The San Juan was a little high. Boulder sat par. The rest of them were low. The Pavant, let's see, what did we do? There was San Juan, there was a Beaver. All of them kind of went lower than normal. We bought the statewide tag. Seems like we were 40,000 lower than it normally goes for. As far as elk goes, the only one that went up was the San Juan that I saw. And there might be some couple of sleeper bulls that Adam Bronson's sitting on out there. I don't know, but those tags were up. Deer for the most part were par. It seemed like our Antelope Island and our statewide went a little high. Some of our premier units, like the Henrys, are really struggling. So I can't see anything going crazy, even in a strong economy, as far as deer go. But, we've got some really good deer units that seem to be doing well. The Paunsaugunt looks good. The Oak Creeks has been tipping over some giant deer. Like even our par units, the Vernon had 2 or 3 die that were really nice. So as far as tags go, I think it was low on average, but there was a couple that went over.
Okay. Ryan, it's been great having you on the podcast. I really appreciate you spending time, with us and giving us some knowledge. I want to give you a chance to let listeners know how they can reach out to you, how they can follow, and if you had any final thoughts or concluding thoughts, feel free to do so. But it's always, sorry I missed you at the expo, but it's always great. I love following your Instagram account. Love seeing the pictures and what have you, and it's going to be another great season. So we're all excited, and thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks, Jay. My Instagram's probably the best way. I have a Facebook page, DC Outfitters, and a Twitter and a bunch of other ones, but the one that probably has the most traffic is Instagram, Ryan DC Outfitters. And if you like trail cam pics, you're going to like it. If you don't, you might get mad at my white smile or my flat brim hats. I don't know. It should be a really good year. I had high hopes for last year and things flipped on its head, but I'm really feeling good about this year. Saw lots of acorns last fall, which I didn't see the year before. Acorns typically for Utah mean fat bulls, and so I think our bulls suffered this winter pretty well. We're going to have lots of water, and I'm really excited for 2019, but we'll just see how it goes. Should be a lot of fun either way.
Right on, buddy. Well, God bless. Thanks for spending time with us, and good luck. I'll be following all summer, hopefully watching some of these big velvet bulls as you watch them along, and always cheering you on next season as well.
Sweet. Thanks so much, Jay. I always enjoy talking with you.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Bye.